So here's a long story short. Snake stopped sieging because there wasn't a lot of officers that were really willing to pick up the reins and start working hard on getting the guild back on track. It had GVG attendance issues, it had siege attendance issues, and so basically called it quits on siege, and we were going to become a casual node war guild. People left because they wanted to keep doing siege, and things still kind of dwindled, wasn't doing too well. We had like one active officer, and then eventually a couple weeks went by, we didn't really get any new recruits, nothing was really changing, and Divios ended up leaving the guild. And Divios giving up was an indication that, hey, Snake is pretty much done for, and it's never gonna, be anything. And so a lot of the PvP core started leaving.
Alright, so you guys might or might not be aware, but essentially Snake has fully retired from Node Wars and Siege as a guild. And I just want to go through a cautionary tale. If you guys remember back in the Man Up era 3 or 4 years ago, they were the strongest guild after server merge. They had the strongest players, the most geared individual guild out of the entire server. And, they could consistently drop on node and 1v10 or drop for siege or 1v3 and 1v4 and actually win some of those fights. But I think those days are pretty much over. The days of just throwing raw gear at another guild and expecting to do well or even win. So I just want to go through my thoughts on guild on Snake's guild image over the past 2 or 3 years. I've always thought of, again, this is from an outside perspective. I've never been Snake myself, and this is my opinion, right? So you're free to agree with or disagree with it as you please. Now, my thoughts on Snake were that they were always a very gear and meta reliant guild. What I mean by this, I mean that, for example, when the Suck Wizard meta came out, Snake pretty much had most of their members bring Suck Wizard ults for Siege. And also, they were always a guild that was very much on top of the gear curve in terms of gear progression. Now, this led them to always have a very strong main ball. However, their special teams, for example, their flex, cannons, defense, was pretty much next to non-existent or very weak compared to the other top siege or node war guilds. Now, as a guild, a guild as a whole, Snake, their mentality has always been pretty laid back, from my opinion, especially when they approached node wars or siege. They hated doing any sort of politics, even if it was for the betterment of a fight. I can tell you, case in point, Corrupt tried to reach out to them a couple of times to set up pretty even 2v2s or 3v3s on Medaya, and they refused pretty much all of those fights. And when they did place for Node Wars, it was just to drop on one node for a week to get their qualifier for Siege, essentially. So, they were a guild that really fell behind in terms of the Siege and Node War, meta and how it's shifted over the past 1 or 2 years. So this brings me on to my next point, which is Snake tried to become a more active and more PvP focused guild when they recruited Drift and some of the Brutal members into their guild. Now, they tried to plant for node war fights. They became very active in terms of GVG, sometimes having 6 to 7 hour GVGs against Vertex. This could have led to some burnout. And they participated, or they took part in some very big siege fights. Case in point, the Black Rose versus Snake 1v1 in Valencia, which is what I'm showing right here in the VOD. And also the Snake versus Vertex 1v1 when Vertex was defending Medaya Castle and Snake was attacking. Now, both of these fights, Snake lost pretty convincingly, and their guild morale took a big hit because Snake was always seen as a guild that was very strong, other smaller guilds didn't want to compete with Snake because of their strength, and losing these two 1v1s, I feel like made it seem like Snake was not was their strength was not as strong as it seemed, right? Essentially, it's like it made the guild look a lot weaker, which it is a lot weaker because they weren't able to properly adapt to the change in meta, especially in Node Wars and Siege. And it showed during both of these 1v1s, or even in Node War fights when Snake was expected to win a fight, but they just couldn't because they lacked coordination, they lacked proper special teams, and essentially they were a guild that fell behind in terms of in terms of the Node War and Siege scene, right? Now, in terms of the Black Rose 1v1, it wasn't really one single factor that caused them to lose. It was just kind of combination. Black Rose's main ball was better than them. The shot calling was better. Cannons was better. Defense was better. Flex was better. And essentially, there wasn't like one thing that caused BR to defeat Snake on Valencia 2 months ago. Now, for the Snake versus Vertex 1v1, it was very clear why Snake couldn't even take first gate. I think, or I think they did take first gate, but they couldn't take the second gate. But essentially, what happened was they lost that 1v1 against Vertex, and the primary reason why I think they lost it was because they didn't have proper coordination. They didn't have proper coordination between their cannon team and their main ball. And so what I'm saying is the cannons were just shooting your first gate instead of actually trying to de-annex their structures and recovery centers at the back. And the cannonballs weren't really hitting anything. The gate was still not even lowered. And not having a coordinated cannon team, especially attacking Castle 1v1 for Siege, is a huge detriment. And people told Snake like a couple of months ago they need a proper cannon team, especially if they're planning to attack a Castle 1v1. The cannons are so important right now for Node War and Siege. And the fact that even to that day, Snake couldn't commit to a proper and well-coordinated cannon team, and they chose to attack Medaya 1v1, kind of sealed their fate as well. Now, the other point I want to talk about is, I'm sure some of you have seen past Snake VODs with shot callers or comms. If you guys remember Norelio, when he was shot calling for Corrupt, Corrupt was doing really well, and then he joined Snake and started main ball shot calling for Snake. Now, he didn't do that well in Snake, and the reason I feel like he didn't do that well in Snake is because I don't think a lot of the members respected Norelio. They didn't listen to his shot calls, and also they contradicted his shot calls. This happened the same with Drift Panda. You see individual guild members and guild officers essentially contradict and actively attack the shot caller during the middle of Node War. Now, these are wars that are broadcasted to hundreds, if not thousands, of people on Twitch and online. So if I'm a member looking to join a active PvP guild and I see the main ball shot caller being contradicted in open comms, not once but multiple times, that's a huge deterrent for me to ever join that guild. And as you heard Choi say, one of the reasons Snake died was because they weren't getting any recruits. Well, you gotta remember, like, what is the draw to people wanting to join Snake? The draw before was because Snake controlled Castle, when Castle actually used to matter, right? But with the introduction of Alvia, I don't think Castle even matters that much anymore. So you have to ask yourself, right? What draws somebody to join a guild like Snake? They don't have good Node War attendance. They're not an active Siege guild. They have a lot of issues internally, right? because people are contradicting shot callers, and also their morality isn't that doing that great because they've lost some pretty big 1v1s recently. So the recruitment, the lack of special teams, the falling behind the curve, and also them not having an active officer corps leads to issues like this. It's like a compounding effect, essentially. And the other thing is that, so the last thing I want to talk about is if you're a guild that is looking to get stronger or become better in Node Wars or Siege, take a lesson from this. It's not enough to just have gear and have skill, individual skill. If you have a lot of players that have a lot of gear and also a lot of skill, but they don't work well together, they don't coordinate well together as a machine, the guild as a whole won't be on the top. So what I mean by this, so like imagine if you had a machine and it was missing one or two of its components. For example, for a machine to operate properly, you need a strong main ball, you need a strong flex, you need a strong defense team, and a strong cannon team and special team as a whole, right? You need good coordination between your main ball, flex, you need a good shot caller, and your members, most importantly, need to respect that shot caller and commit to calls. Now, if these factors aren't aligned, then like you have what happened with Snake. Essentially, you have a guild that has a lot of gear, they have skilled individual members, but also they're lacking in coordination. But yeah, that's pretty much all I want to go through today. This last point, I plan to release the Rujinx podcast and also the 2v2 from this weekend on Cautionary over the next couple of days. I don't want to spam the YouTube video upload section too much. But yeah, if you guys have any feedback or comments, leave them in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts. And apart from that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.